group get together. We had a committee that we actually met in this room 2 times. We reserved a 3rd time. They did go through the entire document. It's important for everyone to know that the code of conduct is not the student handbook that parents and students see coming home every year. The code of conduct is a policy level document. And part of the process is we have to have the review committee, then we have to have it posted online, then we have to have this public hearing tonight. And after that, the board will take action during their meeting to approve it for next school year, just so everybody's in the audience and at home and around the table is on board with the process. So happy and thankful for the group of people that met with the committee. They did a lot of nice work and reviewed several items that came up as not areas of concern, but areas to take a look at after being 1 year into the big revision that we did last year. So I appreciate all the administrators, teachers, parents, students, support staff, and board members that served on that committee. So if there's any comments on it, now is the time. And if not, then you can, Mr. President, you can close the hearing when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Does anybody have anything they'd like to comment on the public hearing for the code of conduct? Okay, we'll close it out at 7:01. And at this time, we'll call the meeting to order. If we can stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So to get started, we have to approve some routine items. I need a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting of May 8th, 2023. Accept and order filed the minutes of the Committee on Special Education for the dates listed. Accept and order filed the minutes of the Committee on Preschool Special Education for 5-3, 5-9, 5-10, 5-23, and 5-30. Do we have a motion? Seconded by Mike. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Also, we need a motion to approve the code of conduct for 2023 to 24. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the 2023-24 code of conduct. Do we have a motion? So moved by Heidi, seconded by Crystal. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, so Superintendent's report, Mr. Wood.
Yep, so I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. It's a great night to see everyone. We have a lot of awesome things to be shared with you, so I will try to talk less and listen more tonight, which is difficult for me, anybody who attends meetings with me. But this first part you are going to hear from me. It's our annual retiree celebration, and we do have some retirees we'd like to recognize tonight, so I'm going to ask President Gollin to come around front with me so that we can recognize the retirees. Retirees, we have some mementos for you to recognize your retirement. We also have some nice snacks in those boxes over there. So if you would like to have a really nice treat, I don't know exactly what's in there. Mrs. Hensel took care of that, but I've heard that it looks really good. So if you don't, at the end we'll try to give those to the students that are here, but we want to give our retirees first crack at that, so please do. So we'll come around front, and we do have photos of everybody to display as well. Yeah, so I spoke for the first time last year about our retirees, and some of the things they say may be similar because they come from the heart. They come from my experience, and when we look at Mrs. Penny Gallagher, a special education teacher, you can see that there's 2 people in that first row. That's because we've got a team who are leaving in the same year. That's going to leave a pretty significant void for us. So I want to acknowledge that even in the photos, they wanted to have a picture of their team up on there. So you're going to see that double picture in the next slide as well. But anybody who works in education knows it can be a very difficult and also a very rewarding job. Nobody knows that better than a person who decides to dedicate their entire career to working with special education through special needs. I have a supreme respect in my heart for the work that's done. I truly do. graduated high school here. Is that right? No, somebody, sorry, I'm looking on the wrong side. Went to school and then came back and you've been here 32 years. So you spent the better part of 50 years of your life in your life in this building. So I want to thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And we do have something for you, and Jeff has his glasses so you can read what these say. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You have any big plans? Yep, so moving on to,
Just a reminder, we have to approve the resident here.
so,
It may not be that.
those back in February. Not that we won't be reached now, probably not too much better for having a couple of conversations about how we're going to move on. So, same comments, you know, maybe not graduating from school here, so maybe not 50 years of this. So maybe not 50 years within these walls, but again, the same sentiment about dedicating your life to working with our children with special needs, and can't say any more about that. So much great work. I know there's challenging days. I hope that as we move out of this year, the challenging days fade and once we worry days will once we I'm sure that's how it will be to go through. I truly appreciate it. So I'd like to recognize Lisa Barber as well. Any big plans? Nashville?
I'm going to Tennessee.
We're not together?
A week apart. You might be with her.
Good for you. That's great. Yep. So I'm not sure if I saw Laura. Oh, yes, awesome. So, again, I say these things from the heart. My mother spent a long time in Fort Ann driving the school bus. She also spent some of those years working in the cafeteria, so there's some overlap there. As we learned in the last 2 years, this place doesn't operate the way that it should if we don't have bus drivers. So I want to congratulate you on a successful career. I want to thank you for going out on the days when it's raining and snowing, when kids are screaming, when adults are screaming, when other drivers are screaming, and when you want to scream and you don't. So I really want to thank you for your dedication, and I hope you have great plans for your retirement. I'll let you know that I do appreciate the work that you do. I truthfully do, and I hope that you have done what we asked you to do. You find 2 people to replace you. Everybody who retires from bus garage has to find 2 people to replace them, so we can keep things moving for our kids here. But any big plans for retirement?
Just to ask where I am.
Right in.
Smart answer. Lord, I'd like to congratulate you on we wish you the best. I hope that your boss takes it easy on you. Good luck. So Susan. So I do want to just say a few words about the work of a teacher's aide. They can be doing anything that has to happen in the school, depending on the day, especially over the last couple of years, through their whole career. You might be watching the lunchroom this day, and you might be chasing a kid across the playground the next day, and anywhere in between here and there. We're trying to teach them math facts another day. So people have to be very flexible, very resilient, and have to show up every day with a smile on their face, despite what might have happened the day before. So I do want to give, Susan, I hear a round of applause for her. Oh, right in front of me, sorry. So Ann's been lobbying, she was lobbying for an extra snow day around Memorial Day. So it didn't work out for us. I like those just as much as you do because that's my birthday, my wedding anniversary, and all those good things. I'm sorry I couldn't come through on that. Ann's another person who went through school here, came back at least 34, how many years? 30 plus years of teaching here, and I would often see and the community too. So It's always nice to see you. I'll continue to see you at church here and there. I'm sure I'll see you around on the town of those places. But I don't know if your entire career has been in middle school or not, but you spent the last several years over there doing sixth grade.
Yeah,
15 years over at the middle school doing sixth grade. Again, talk about these positions. They're unique, they're challenging.
in that.
And to work with middle school students and take a special person as well. I want to think that. I want to wish you the best in retirement. Here's what are the plans? You have, tell me Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Or-
Oh, yeah, we're not going to Tennessee, or Nashville. Hopefully Savannah, getting my foot operated on so I don't have to walk around
That
with
does sound like fun.
slippers. You know, through the winter.
It's subbing a lot, right?
I said, I would come back.
I was just joking, but I appreciate it.
Yes, I would.
But
If I
congratulations.
can't drive for 2 months after my foot.
We'll send
We'll
somebody
pick
to
you
pick you
up.
up. Don't worry. You send Lauren to the park. But thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate it, and good luck in retirement. Oh, I saw Colleen for sure over there. There's Colleen. So when I first started, I started going around the buildings and trying to meet people. And you walk into the IS, and then there's this one person that always seems to be there. I got a tour because McTagg wasn't there. She wasn't doing her job that day. He somehow wandered off. He was someplace where he was supposed to be doing work. But it was great. You brought me in. You treated me so kindly. You gave me the tour. And that was the last time you were that way. You gave me the business every day since then, which I deserve, and I appreciate. Again, working those front desk jobs, a smiling face to greet people like me, or a parent that may be upset, or a student that's upset or having a tough day. Takes an awful lot of dedication and a lot of passion. And then to be down in the library and working through all that, so our students have a positive library experience. And I heard that you are one of the bulletin boards over there. All of those great things that we do, again, kind of like the Swiss Army knife at that front desk. I know we still haven't decided how Mr. McCann is going to receive his lunch. You also helped make sure that he was well fed, at least the time I've been here. I want to congratulate you. I wish you a happy retirement. Do you have anything planned for retirement? Travel. Good for you. We wish you the very best. I know we'll see you around a little bit soon. That's awesome. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cheryl A. Jones. No? No, so another, not here, again, another school bus driver. I don't have to repeat it all, but that is a, these are all tough jobs. And rewarding at the same time. So I wish her the best in retirement. We'll make sure that she receives her electros here. The desserts we can't guarantee we'll make it to her. That's just how it goes. Joe Bailey, still out there tonight. So another school bus driver. Again, if you know anybody who's a bus driver, please have them apply because we just heard 3 names, and that is going to be concerning for us moving into next year. Is George? So George, we did go over and recognize George right before he did his last day because he left a couple months ago. He left in December. So we did spend some time recognizing him over there in the school building at a full school assembly. So thanks to Mr. McTagg and Whitman for putting it on for George. My father spent some time as a custodian and reporting in school as well. Those can be thankless jobs sometimes. I will tell you for certain, the kindergartners did a great job thanking him that last day. And if you're a custodian and bus driver with me, you know that when you're in those buildings with those little people, you do get a lot of hugs, you get a lot of recognition, a lot of time. Mr. George. So congratulations to Mr. George. We wish him the best, and we'll make sure he gets his allowance. she is. Hey! Good to see you. So again, food service has meant so much to our kids. Again, I mentioned that my mom did it, so I spent a lot of time in the school cafeteria and school lunch garage. Surprise, surprise, right? I make it a point to try to hit every cafeteria when I'm in the building and say hello to the people that are working there. I absolutely do, because the work that you do for our kids, we know we have many students who the best meals that they're going to have, the most consistent meals they're going to have during the day occur here at school. So I appreciate all the dedication to making sure that our kids were well fed, and just being a kind person as the kids come through the line with their heads down. The people who work in food service also are saying, hey, how are you doing? They're trying to keep tabs on our kids. They're letting the administrators and the teachers in the buildings know how the kids are doing. And I truly appreciate that work that you've done for us as well. How about you? Any plans? To get better. And we wish you luck in that for a long and healthy retirement. I'm sure. Congratulations to you.
Hey, Dan, will you turn that microphone on when you leave?
Can I leave?
Yeah. Well,
It's
a
on
little
right
late for that.
now. So I think that's the retirees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two special recognitions to do. Yeah, we'll do this one first. So for this one, I'm going to turn to the table. We do have a plaque. As many of you know, I'm sorry to have my back to everybody. As many of you know, Mark Gallo has decided to leave the board, did not run for another term. But I'd be very remiss if I didn't thank you just for the last 2 years working with me, but certainly for all of your years since 2016 that you've been on the board and all the work you've done. Buildings and grounds wouldn't have been the same without you and won't be the same without you. Annual Finance Committee, a fresh perspective. I'll still remember the first time I met you. You were home and I was being interviewed. I think it was in this room. And I couldn't figure out what camera to look at. And that's how I learned out what an owl camera was. I had to look at the top of that little thing so I could actually be looking at you and converse with you when you ask me a question. But on behalf of the school district and from Jess Hands on behalf of the board, we'd like to present you with this plaque. It says, in recognition, I don't have to memorize it. You mind if I in recognition and appreciation for your many years of dedicated service to the Hudson Falls Central School District Board of Education. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. And then the last one, another special presentation for recognition. As many of you know, Mr. Benefield will be leaving after 20 years of service to the district. He's headed to Argyle for a July 1 start over there. Again, I've known, you hear a lot about Fort Ann tonight. So he and I were students together in Fort Ann. He is a year and a little bit more older than me. So I'm the youngest of the two. But I do want to make sure that everybody thanks you. So from the board and from me and from the school district, I'd like to present you with this plaque, or have our President Gong present you with this plaque in recognition and appreciation for your many years of dedicated service to the Hudson Falls Central School District, Mr. James Benefield.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you very much.
And that's what we had for the recognition part. We're going to hear a little bit about the seal of biliteracy, and I think I'll state, we do have certificates for the students. We'll stay out here, but you have a little bit to say, Mrs. Major, about that? Do you mind? And Maggie, sorry. Feel free. We'll give you the floor.
We're a package.
You absolutely are, and I appreciate that. We'll step to the side and come back up.
So we have 3 students, 3 seniors receiving the seal of biliteracy this year. You want to speak about the first student?
Sure. My one French student this year is Cindy Keenan. Unfortunately, she can't be here tonight because she has a scholarship dinner that she has to go to. I said that was a little more important. But I was able to give her her medal earlier today. The Seal of Biliteracy is the students basically presenting to us and showing to us that they can speak and write and communicate and read in a language other than English. And Sydney's presentation was on, actually she got her idea from a Netflix show. It was a French Netflix show that she watched that I had introduced her to. And she did a 10-minute presentation on what the show was based on, which was a fire at a charity bazaar in France in 1942 or something. So she did a lot of great research on it and was able to speak for about 15 minutes and then have a 5-minute conversation afterwards in French, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, so this is Hudson Falls' 4th year with the New York State Seal of Biliteracy. Even though it's the New York State Seal of Biliteracy, it's a national recognition. It carries a lot of clout. It has a seal that goes on your diploma. It goes on their official transcript. It shows employers and colleges that these students can indeed communicate at a certain proficiency level. And it's the proficiency level that says that, yes, you are biliterate. So it doesn't mean you're fully fluent, but you can communicate, which is a huge accomplishment. And it's something that these students don't have to do. They take it on of their own accord. It's extra work for them, and yet they embrace it and they push through it. And it truly is an accomplishment. So for Spanish, we have 2 students that are here tonight. We will make sure that Sydney gets her certificate. And the 2 students that earned the Seal of Biliteracy for Spanish this year are, I'm going to call you both forward, and if you guys could just come forward and receive your certificates and your medallions. We have Dom Doyle and Reagan Johnson. Hold on, because I have, this may seem trivial, but you know what it means. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and again, congratulations to these students.
So just one last recognition, then we'll get back to the table. And I know that she's not here tonight. I haven't seen Mary Kay's not here tonight. She's definitely watches online every time. So I want to recognize her. She puts in a lot of work in the business office under Mr. Palanci's ample tutelage. But every year she gets it so that we win these awards from our insurance providers because we're in compliance with all of these very odd things that they make us do so that we can prove that we have a school that's safe on so many levels. So I want to make sure that I recognize Mary Kay Schwab and Mr. Palanci and the business office, but mostly Mary Kay, on making sure that we got the 2023 School Safety Excellence Award. And again, it was presented to Hudson Falls at the titanium level in recognition of the school's outstanding efforts to create a safer school environment, and as a direct result of the school's diligence and adherence to safety principles prescribed to safety group members. This certificate was awarded actually back in March. We didn't get the plaque until after that, so I wanted to make sure that she was recognized, and that Kevin also was recognized for that this evening. Thanks. I just have a few more items. It wouldn't be June if I wasn't sitting in front of everyone, and especially and everybody at home as well, and just say thank you to our voters who supported our school budget, also supported our energy performance contract work that we're looking to do, supported our new board members, one returning board member and our new board member, Mrs. Borling, is back there this evening. and also supported our deposit into our capital reserve. All those items passed, and it doesn't happen without the community standing behind the school district. So I want to thank all the voters, and certainly the voters that are here tonight, anybody who watches tonight or later on. Thank you so much from me, and I think that the board probably would echo those comments as well. We can't do it without you. We need you to make this work.
And just one quick note, on behalf of the board, I want to say we dedicate ourselves to you and want you to know, all the retirees. I mean, there's probably over 200 years of dedication, commitment, loyalty. Your longevity means a lot to our district, and it shows. And on behalf of the board, thank you very much.
A few others, and you're going to hear less from me. But I did want to make sure that the board was aware that our No Place for Hate designation at the middle school was renewed, and I want to congratulate both Mr. Whitty and Mr. Strong on that occurring. There's a lot of work that goes into that, so I appreciate them doing that work and wanted to make sure that they were recognized this evening as well. I wanted to give the floor for just a second to Maggie Hogan, so that's a surprise for her. And it's a surprise for her, and it's on purpose because I didn't want her. She's a nervous person. So there's an agriculture grant that our school has been awarded, and she got. Do you want to just talk? I don't want to take away because I want to give you a chance. How about 5 sentences, if you don't mind, to the board? And the mic is on. You'll be fine.
Do you want me to come up here?
If you don't mind. So
Mr. Ward, this makes me more nervous, so I don't know if I can do this to me. I got an email probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, about an agriculture grant that was given to Carrie Warner, our assemblywoman, and it was $25,000, and we got picked for it. We had less than 24 hours to work, and we got it done because Mr. Ward and Mr. DiCaprio and Mr. Palencia are amazing and helped me. With this grant, we are going to be able to do so much more than we already are doing this year with like getting kids out of school experiences and hands-on and just a lot more. And I actually have a student here that's going to get into that much more than I am because I have no idea that I was supposed to do this. So thanks, Mr. Ward. Is there any points you want me to cover?
No, I wanted you to talk about how it happened. And what I want to say, you said it, you got this email. What I want to say to you is thank you for
Putting myself out there.
putting yourself out there, letting people know that we've got a program we're trying to grow here, including Assemblywoman Warner and other people, and being the face of that program. You may not know it, but Ms. Hogan was featured in the New York State School Board Association newspaper that goes out to all school board members and across the state. Our program was featured in there with her photograph, and it's
Thanks to Mr. Ward.
it's been a real, and I didn't do this so you would keep thanking me, so don't think that. But I want to thank you for seeing that and really making sure that grant happened in just a short couple of days we had, and I'll thank my counterparts down here. I had very little to do with it. They definitely did. And showing that commitment, because in the end, our kids are going to benefit from that. So I appreciate it. I want to give you that, mostly because I want to make sure you get a round of applause for the work that you've done.
Teaching me to talk a lot.
Yeah, for sure. A couple items for the board. The New York State School Board's convention's in Buffalo this year. I know that Mrs. Hensel set that out. We had one person write back and said they were in. So it must have been a decent experience out in Syracuse. I will say, board members who, if you haven't had the opportunity to go, and you can commit the 2 days to getting out of town, it's been a worthwhile conference. Do you want to speak 30 seconds about the worthwhileness of last year?
Yeah, I think anything that you have an interest in, you can find a workshop to go and learn more about, and things that you didn't even know you might be interested in, you can find something there too. And the networking, talking to other board members across the state, and being able to kind of hold our board up and how well trained we are in comparison to other boards across New York State, I think is also really helpful. It was great.
So if you are interested, if you could let Mrs. Hensel know, there is registration deadlines, all those types of things. And I like, if we're, so now that I know there's some person's going out, we'll get registered and we'll go.
You bet.
But we need to book the accommodations on day one, or you're staying 25 or 30 miles away, which makes it difficult to attend sessions when you're trying to coordinate the transportation portion of that. And the last piece for me on the report is asking the board about a summer retreat. A couple of updates have mentioned that our work this summer should be around the strategic plan. I will tell you that we got a draft report. We had a meeting with the consultants, Mike, Kevin, and I today about that, so it is still in draft form. There was a couple of data points that she needed from us, just numbers, total numbers of students, total numbers of parents. Besides that, the report is ready to go. So you'll have a final draft of that report probably in the next week in your hands or in your inboxes, so you can take a look at it. But we do need some time to do a SWOT analysis. Mike, SWOT stands for
Got it this time?
supports, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Strengths.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I have it written down right here. But again, I didn't bring my glasses, so that happens. My apologies. So we do need to do a board SWOT training. And what the consultant told me is that if the board commits to reading the report prior, that knocks 30 to 40 minutes off of our meeting. So we can do it in like 2.5 hours. If we need to go through the report first, we're at 3:15. So I'm looking for some dates around I don't know if you want to throw some dates out, but I was looking at, I thought about this possibility about meeting prior to our July board meeting, but I don't know all your vacation schedules yet. I know that some folks miss the July meeting sometimes, and that's just how life is. We'd like to have as many there as possible, but we'd like to do it earlier in July, like around our board meeting week, if possible. So I don't know if we want to throw dates out, or if people know they're absolutely not available that week, or if we just want to say we can come in.
After work, like up to 8 or something?
I was thinking that, or if we also, our July board meeting, based on what I have, will be relatively short. So we could start our meeting early and still be here for a period of time and do it all on that same night. Because I know it's always difficult to get out a second night, but I'm just looking for conversation or consensus or request to need more time to look at calendars.
I will not be here.
Okay.
I'll be in Alaska.
All good for you?
Mm-hmm.
Just that week.
Yeah, for 10 days. So the 4th through the 14th.
Okay.
We'll be gone.
So we're saying out loud, so Jeff's got a conflict for I don't want to speak for you, but if people have got conflicts, now's the time. What about the week after the scheduled board meeting? Is that, who's out, are you out of town that week? All right. I saw you kind of smile. I saw Amanda.
I still use a paper calendar, so I can't tell you.
Okay. Do you know your July schedule? The week after is not good for you. Okay. So why don't we do this? I'll have Kelly start working on a date that might work for all of us. And I get it. But the board SWOT is one of the first things, along with an administrative SWOT analysis, before we can engage our building teams and shared decision-making in the process. And we were trying to do some of that work this summer, if possible, to come in with some actionable items for September. That being said, if we can't get enough people together around this group and it delays us, and if I can't get enough people around the shared decision-making teams, and that delays us, more concerned with quality over speed, as long as we aren't talking about this like next November. Right? September for the faculty possibly, I would like to really try to do it in the summertime. But again, quality over speed. I'm hoping the board, I know the admin can accomplish it during the summer because I'm going to schedule it, and we're going to do it, and we'll do it well, and we'll work something out for the board. And that's what I had.
You just want to re-mention the reorg meeting date.
Is it on there?
It's at the end of your presentation.
So our board, our reorg meeting is the 11th. Right, we need to have a quorum for that. Kelly's been working on that. Mrs. Hudson been working on that already for a while. She's got quite a bit. in the draft agenda. So if you have questions about things that you see in the draft, and a couple of questions. I didn't see any email today till like 30 minutes ago. So I know a few people have asked some questions. I think I answered yours, and I have answers to yours. But they're on our July agenda. You got it. So we have our science folks here tonight. As part of our commitment to the curriculum review process, Mike has developed a schedule so that we're seeing from a couple of content area groups. You know that you saw from our art people. And we are going to swing the pendulum to the opposite side and turn it over to our science department and our science chair, Rob Livingston.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our science program with you tonight. My name is Robert Livingston. I've taught here for 22 years in the science department, and I'm the 6 through 12 science department chairperson. Mrs. Keenan isn't able to join us tonight. She's at the same scholarship award that was mentioned previously. So I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Lawrence to talk about our K-5 science program.
I'm going to give you a round of applause.
Brought my notes here. Where do I stand? Like, where's the camera?
The camera's over there, but it's okay. It's,
You're talking to these
Oh, I'm
folks.
talking to you guys.
yeah.
So I'm Jocelyn Lawrence. For those of you who don't know, I am the 5th grade level coordinator, and I'm here going to represent K through 5 science and speak on behalf of them. Is this how I click to move?
You
this
do,
now?
and I can do it too if you need me
Oh.
to play Vanna. Just call it
Okay.
out.
So I'll start with the K2, as I'm just the 5th grade science teacher, or teach 5th grade in whatever science. Anyway, K2 science, they're really building our foundation to get them prepared, get all our students prepared for our 3-5 science and beyond when they go into high school. And as they made the shift to the new standards, from my understanding, it's really hands-on, a lot more science labs. They are bringing in outside organizations to get that engagement up for our students. Cornell, the Children's Museum, Up Yonda, and the Star Lab have all come in and done presentations with the students. And on the next couple slides, you'll see a lot of pictures from the primary school and the K Center of some of the really cool hands-on things that they've been doing. The primary school every year hosts the science fair, and I know as a parent of those students and as a teacher in the next building up, that the kids absolutely love the science fair. It really gets them engaged and ready when they get over to our building. So you can flip over to the next, there you go, so next slide. So these pages right here are these pictures, are some of the pictures that the primary school and K Center have sent me on some of their experiments, some of the units that they did. And like the first couple pictures, the students are planting seeds because they're going to go on and do some experiments with the plants in a unit called the Interdependence Between Plants and Animals. And then they built volcanoes. On there, you can see that picture down there. Then they used Play-Doh to model the different layers of the earth, which is pretty cool. And then they use popsicle sticks or toothpicks and marshmallows to help do some labs on the states of matter and structures. And you can see some of the presentations of the groups that are coming in. So they're really getting those kids excited for when they come over to our building at the 4-5 building. So in science over the last year, we've really kind of shifted the way that we're teaching science. It's definitely much more inquiry-based, argumentative. We're not just giving facts. There's no textbook. There's nothing like that. We're presenting kids with a question, and then they discover it. They find it on their own. So for example, in 5th grade, we started the year with a unit called Why Do Falling Stars Fall? And that kind of looks at our whole solar system and what's going on in there. And then one of my favorite units we did this year is, it's called What Happens to Our Garbage? You know, we talk to kids, so much garbage, so much waste, and we built landfill bottles, like miniature landfills in bottles, and the kids got to decide what they wanted to put in the landfills. So we had food, but we also had pencils and little pieces of plastic and things, and we kept it, like mine are still in the classroom on the windowsill in mason jars, screwed on, so it doesn't smell, but it's god-awful if you do crack it open. But they really got to see the food decompose. and that the plastic is still sitting there, and the pencils, all those other things are still sitting there, and it's going to be there. What happens to our food? So, super interesting unit. And then this next one really got into the argument base is, why does it matter if we drink tap water or bottled water? And we really looked at water quality and also, the effects that just that bottle of water that's sitting on their desk that they're just going to go toss in the garbage can, like, what are the long-term effects? Like, sure, you throw one water bottle, but there's 20 of you in this class, then there's 8 fifth grade classrooms, then there's 16 in our building, and then how many are in our whole district, and then how many schools are in New York State, and then how many schools are in the entire United States, and their minds were just blown at just looking at, like, the impact that they have. They throw out that one water bottle without thinking about it. And then we researched ocean animals and how does the decision that they make today to throw that in the garbage affect the ocean animals. And they have not given it to you yet, but they have letters that they wrote, Mr. McTagg, on why we should have a recycling program at our school, and how they made solutions to the problem for our classroom alone on how they could reduce the number of water bottles that they threw away, and the effects that that's going to have on our school and then on the state and on the country, which you'll be getting those letters, well, sometime before next week. They're sitting on my desk. So it's really cool, and I think that they're really loving it. I'm hoping that that is going to prepare them more when they get up to middle school and beyond. But in terms of some other things that we're doing at the 3-5 level is there's no state science test this year, so that was great and all, but we're now, with the shift in the standards and the testing, is there's now required investigations. The state has required that 3 through 5 perform investigations. There's like required labs, and they can do, there's 4 of them, and they cover standards from 3rd grade to 5th grade. And up there we have the rollout that we work together to figure out how can we get all of our kids through all of those investigations to prepare to take the state science test next year in 5th grade, because it's not only a computer-based test, but it's also part of the questions are based on those 4 investigations that they do. And representatives, myself, and the other grade level coordinators, 3 through 5, we attended 4 different BOCES trainings on the investigations. And one of the really cool things is like being able to sit down from all those other school districts and talk science, and talk about like where we are in the standards, where we are in the investigations. And it was really, really nice to hear that Hudson Falls was leading the way. We got to go and talk about like what plans we already have. How did we already come out with a rollout table? How we've already been looking at these standards and doing and implementing these changes, when some districts were like, investigation, what's that? So it was really nice that, thanks to everything you guys do, Mr. DiCaprio and Mr. McTagg, that we were already really ahead of the game in there, and it was nice to see Hudson Falls represented so well when we went there. We've had an opportunity to roll out those investigations and work out some of the kinks in some of them, because anything like New York State, they roll them out kind of fast, and then trial and error. There's some of these are some of my kids there. We were watching down there on the bottom, we made mountains out of foil, and we were watching how the rainfall goes and it follows the path, how it kind of carves out its own path and measurement. That up in the top corner there, trays of garbage, we took all of our food garbage, all our waste, and we sorted it into different categories to figure out what we're throwing away, and we're doing some more measuring in there. Some of our 4th grade science experiments in there, some of their labs. As Cloud in the Bottle investigation, if anybody wants to come take a look at that one, that's really fun. We light some matches and set some things on fire. And we make clouds. Well, sort of make clouds, but that's one of the New York State investigations right there. So that's K-5 science in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Take a seat for just a moment here. I'm going to speak on just a few things until we get to the student work, which is, I know why you're really here and interested in this. But the 3 main items being the New York State Science Learning Standards implementation, some cross-curriculum work that we've done both before COVID and after COVID, and some general updates to our programs in the middle school and high school, and then presentation of student work. This really does represent a major shift in how science teachers are required to teach every lesson every day from pre-K through 12. So in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little infographic. We call it 3D science instruction. It's based on the next generation science standards, the national standards. And so from that, Hudson Falls teachers and teachers from all over New York State met and kind of redefined what those next generation standards were going to be. And we've been part of this conversation since 2011. And so really what it is there's the content piece, what the students know. There's really what the students have to do with that knowledge. And that's really the big push now. And then there are these cross-cutting concepts that kind of transcend all the sciences. So much like what Jocelyn said, there's no fifth grade test, or I'm sorry, no fourth grade test this year. Next year we start our updated computer-based fifth and eighth grade test, so red circle there. The following years, they're going to roll out earth and space science and biology, which is now living environment. And then the following year is chemistry and physics. So in terms of cross-curricular activities, before COVID, through the New York State Master Teacher Program, we noticed that there was a kind of a, not a shift, but almost a disconnect between the science and math language that we were using in the classroom, not just in our district, but districts all over kind of the southern Adirondacks. So we got together with the help of some instructional coaches, and we brought the math and science departments together, 612, to come up with like common math language that we can use in all of our courses, especially when we're analyzing and interpreting data. So one of the science and engineering practices, one of the verbs of science that the students have to show that they can do, we talk a lot about arguing from evidence, but analyzing and interpreting data, presenting to their peers, those are all equally weighted. Coming up with their own models rather than just building the models that we design. So we worked together with the math department to really put together some common language there, and actually developed a data science class, which is really big and kind of educational news now. So we do have the scaffold together for a half-credit data science class for middle school students transitioning from middle school to high school to get them an additional half credit. So we haven't implemented that yet, but that's kind of in the future possibly. The last 2 years, our shift has really been, or our focus has been to support the district ELA and reading goals with argumentative writing. So with the help of Heather Batiste, we came up with common claim evidence reasoning posters that are displayed in all of the high school classrooms. Little bit of modification between what evidence is considered in the science classroom versus the social studies classroom, but really the idea was the students need to see that common language to support our goals in ELA, in social studies, in science, and in math. And then we have some additional PD happening this fall with a consultant group for argument-driven inquiry that many of us in the room have actually participated in similarly before, but this is kind of like the new and improved version. And then also some reading and writing in the content area with both Heather and science teacher Jody Supernant. So in terms of major updates, I'll go through these quickly here. We added another science position in the middle school, so there's no split team. So there are 2 science teachers in 6th grade earth and space science, 2 in 7th grade physical science, and 2 in living environment and life science in the 8th grade. We also built that so for students that are not accelerated, that next year we will realize for the first time, we'll have a scaffolded 2-year life science living environment Regents program for those students that don't go on to earth science in 9th grade in the accelerated program. So we're really excited to see how that pans out. And then just like Jocelyn said, Kelly Shepard did a PD in the middle school for our 4 required 6-8 investigations headed towards that grade 8 exam next year. So major updates in the high school. We've expanded our honors earth science program. Jody Supernant now has 2 full sections. And that's designed for those students that show mastery in the 8th grade, the accelerated students coming over, as well as any 9th graders who took living environment and with teacher recommendation would like to kind of be bumped up to an honors level program. We've added, well, I should back up. Years ago, we took a round of student surveys and asked them mostly to try to target the district's attendance goals. What is it that really you want coursework-wise to come to school, to get you to come to school? And we did another round of those surveys recently, and a few of the top hits were forensics and anatomy and physiology. So we now have 2 half-year electives in the high school, for primarily 11th and 12th graders, but we have some 10th graders that are doubling up to try to get ahead so it doesn't interfere with BOCES. And then, of course, we've added the new agricultural program with Maggie, so Introduction to Agriculture, Food Science, Animal Science, and Plant Science. So absolutely awesome. This is just a splash page to see the student work that we're about to see. So I have some photos from 6 and 7, and then we have some students from 2 different grade 8 classrooms, a student from grade 9, grade 11, and we'll top it off with our science research student, Lon Graves. All right. So in terms of the 6th grade, this is one of the required labs on weather and climate. So students are required to manipulate multiple sources of evidence. So rather than just one source, one weather map, look at this place in the reference table, really they're required to manage lots of different sources of data. And on the exam, this is going to have to be electronic. So they're going to be clicking through the tabs where that data is going to be presented. So, so we rolled this out this year, and so far it's pretty well received. We also, the students really enjoyed the 7th grade lab. So this is a separating mixtures lab where the students design their own procedure to separate an unknown mixture and try to identify the component parts. So if they decide to use magnets to take out anything magnetic, or use a sieve, or use some sort of chemical test, so those come to us from Mr. Mazarek's class. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Shannon Gills to talk about PBL, project-based learning, in the middle school.
Can I sit down? I'm so much more, I'm so glad you sat down. I was like, yes, I can sit too. Maybe not. Yes, awesome. So coming into the middle school, one of my favorite things was their commitment to project-based learning. I'm a big proponent of civic science, which is that extra step where you actually get into the community and have the kids help solve certain problems. And so it just seemed like this perfect fit that PBL was allowing students to work their way, not to get knowledge, to then eventually make a poster to hang up somewhere. It was really presenting them with a situation, an event, and having them come up with the ideas themselves, having them ask those questions. There's a lot of cool parts to PBL that we can't get into. It's really quite a process. We have the gold standard here. The entry event is my favorite, where you just kind of put the kids in a situation and they don't really know why. Ours was just the lunchroom in middle school. And they had a piece of paper and they just had to write things down. Their goal was to observe middle school behaviors, and they came back with just stacks and stacks and stacks of all these things that they were seeing happening around them. After that, we challenged them. I met a lot, again, with Mrs. Batiste and Chris McPherson, gathering a lot of primary and secondary sources, but eventually asking the question, and I had to write it down to make sure that we're all saying it the same way. It's a good one. How did blank behavior, adolescent behavior, contribute to the evolution of Homo sapiens over other hominid species? It was crickets. They were like, what do you mean? And our theory was that there has to, just why? Why are we doing this? Why do middle schoolers have to just touch each other every time they walk by? You have to touch each other. I learned a lot of new words. What is it, rizzing? You know what rizzing is? I don't know it. She knows. I ended up learning so much about middle school behaviors and looking at it through this lens of why we do it. There has to be a reason that adolescents have these behaviors, or else it wouldn't exist. And so it became this really grand, deep, meaningful question for them. But in the end, we found out things like, you guys can't have your toes out.
Oh my God,
Dogs out. And it was so interesting to get in their heads and try to understand why they do the things that they do. It was pretty intense when they actually had to come up with their hypothesis. The students coming up today are going to talk about gossip, that gossip in middle school can be a pretty harmful and debilitating thing, but trying to understand that tendency and why someone might be engaging in that activity really gave them a little bit more depth and understanding of what other people go through. We invited a PhD student in from the City University of New York. He has a PhD in paleoanthropology, and more specifically in the early Stone Age human behavior. And so he was really impressed that we were getting into the adolescent side. He is in the lower right-hand corner. The students had a great time with him. And he is actually the person who has found the most ancient hominid tool. And it's that rock right there. It's more than 3.3 million years old, and he was the guy that found it. So having them engage with him in the classroom, even over Zoom, is a really interesting thing that, again, the students can maybe speak to, maybe what they learned, their favorite part. In the end, after they did the research to support their hypothesis, they made a claim with evidence. Their goal was to direct a short film that modeled the Homo sapien group out competing or maybe obtaining resources or just in general doing better than another hominid species. And so we came up with a lot of really interesting videos. There were a lot of props and capes and wigs that people would wear to represent different species. But in the end, it was just a really nice way to get the kids to think outside the box and think, why do we do these things? A lot of the research came back to these biologically inherited traits that really do allow adolescents to explore themselves and find what are my boundaries, what's okay, what's not okay, and getting them to that point before they become adults is actually super meaningful and is actually very unique to humans and Homo sapiens that perhaps other hominid species did not have. So I'm going to invite these two up. They're going to speak about their project. Come on up. I'll stand up with you. So we have Kylie Supernaut and Bryn Terry. And so they're just going to give you a little moment in time of what they did for their project. And being the first to go is difficult. So they wrote theirs down, but you guys can go off the cuff if you want to.
Okay, we started our project by observing adolescent behavior such as group traveling. We settled on answering the question, how did adolescent gossip contribute to the evolution of Homo sapiens after other hominin species? We were challenged to identify and study a key factor in Homo sapiens survival and evolution over other species.
When asked to come up with one of these key behaviors, our group landed on gossip. We made a short film depicting how gossip possibly held together the social networks and kept Homo sapiens stronger by putting regulations in place as far as what's socially acceptable. Gossip also creates bonds between people that could have allowed our species to outcompete others. It was interesting to take away how everyday behaviors could have been important in our survival over other hominid species.
Yeah, that's great. You did a great job.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Delisle and his students now to talk about a PBL on food preferences.
All right, so thanks for having us. I have 4 wonderful 8th grade students that will be presenting their PBL project, and we actually kicked off, actually, why don't you guys come around this way so you can talk at the board, please. That was actually kicked off with a local business, Ideal Dairy, so thank you very much for our entry-level event. Again, lots of fun. And I don't really want to talk too much about this. I know they're a little nervous. No, Brennan, you all set to start us off. And I think, Mr. DiCaprio, if you just... One more? Yep, one more. You can take it away, Brennan. And I'll...
Would you like me to talk about Ideal Dairy first and how it...
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
So first we went to Ideal Dairy, where we learned about how the environment of cattle and their food sources and other environmental and abiotic factors can affect their growth and other Honestly, probably you take this.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
You're doing fine.
Other needs? Is that what
Yeah.
you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
So after learning that, we tried to apply that to the slugs and how they eat and their environment and what other things can affect their growth and what they like eating.
Say bye.
So our hypothesis was that if slugs gain more sugar from eating sweet foods, then they're more likely to eat sweet foods because sugar is most easily converted into energy in the body. So we tested this hypothesis by giving them multiple food samples, one of them being high in sugar and the other two not being high in the sugar. And over time we realized that they did not actually like the sugar the most, and they liked other foods such as lettuce and cucumbers instead of apples.
So when we kick off this event, and I'll help you out a little bit, Mr. Gosline, thank you very much, because some of the folks were a little bit nervous and shy. But when we start the whole scientific method process, we jump right into really what is science. And the real struggle typically for 8th grade individuals is really connecting that cause-effect relationship with a hypothesis and thinking about how they're going to set up their experiment, and then how long they're going to run their experiment and how that data is actually going to be presented. So this is typically where we start every year. The individuals make very large jumps as far as their whole cognitive process. After this process, they're pretty well versed in how they're going to tackle another scientific experiment or another investigation that they're interested in. So who wants to add more? Any thoughts?
Steven, I think you got We can add on from
So I would just ask you a question, like if you guys were to redo this experiment, like, did you have any thoughts in terms of your analysis piece that you would even remember?
Yes?
Okay, Brendan does?
We thought that we would want to give them a larger amount of foods to see if they preferred a middle ground between sweetness and lack of sweetness. And we would give them more food samples so that we could better learn about their food preferences.
So a greater variety?
Yes.
All right, I like it. Kylie, did you want to add anything?
Nothing's really covering my mind right now.
Maybe like more varieties of different foods. I think we only, how many different varieties did we do? Only 3?
You just said that.
I'm looking at
Does anybody have any questions specifically to these guys and their 8th grade experience by chance? Or?
Just a quick comment, I guess. It was great having the kids at the farm, and I just loved the way the whole experiment and hypothesis and all that fit into what we're actually doing on the farm. It aligned very well, so kudos to you guys.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Out of the box.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
The kids out of the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Next, we have a 9th grade Regent student, Alyssa Harper, who's also going to be one of our science research sophomores next year. So just to give you an idea of how the new prompts are worded, this is the first time that the science content and standards have been updated since 1996, and a lot has happened since 1996. But they do clearly articulate those 3 dimensions of science in all their prompts and also in their assessment. So in this one, she was asked to communicate scientific information that common ancestry and biological evolution are supported by multiple lines of empirical evidence. And so to speak about what she chose and why is Alyssa.
So I looked at like the amino acids and like different type of things you can look at. Like I looked at different pictures of like the birth, and like you could see with the pictures that humans are more closely related to gorillas than horses, because as you see on the board in figure 1, the gorillas and humans have 1 amino acid difference, but the horses and humans have 24 differences. Also, the embryos of the human in figure 2 look a lot more similar than to the gorillas in figure 3. Then that would mean that the embryos of the horse in figure 4.
Thank you. So before we move on to highlight the kind of the shift. So when I first started teaching here, a similar activity would be, and this is when Mr. Canini was my assistant principal at the time, so my first year. So we would give the students, let's say, some fossil evidence, and they'd have to draw conclusions from just the fossil evidence. Or we give the students pictures of the skeletons, and they'd have to draw conclusions and maybe color in parts of the skeletons. So this really does represent a more complex and authentic way to teach and assess science with students. So, next, I'd like to introduce Maggie again to talk about various.
I have Abby Valdez with me today. She is a junior here, and she is in my animal science class. We're going to shift a little bit different. A lot of these kids are showing you guys experiments and things they've done. Abby's going to talk about a hands-on lab she did where she dissected a sheep uterus. And she's going to talk about how this class in dissections and animal science is going to better her for her future and her future plans. So I'm done. It's all her, and she's going to be a rock star, and I'm right behind you.
Yeah, so in animal science, we obviously dissect other things. We did dissect a sheep uterus, but we also dissected a fetal pig, and that helped us figure out like how animals are related to humans, and like we have similar systems and how they work together. With the sheep uterus, there were actually 2 baby sheep inside of it, which was really cool because we thought there was only going to be 1. But it was really cool to see how, like, the different, like, how that would work and all of the different parts of it and how it, like, makes that baby sheep. How this class helps me would transfer over to like what I would need to know in order to become what I want to be, which is a zoologist. I think that this would help me in ways of knowing how animals behave and could help me like understand them better and how they fit into our ecosystem, I guess, and how we can work with them and basically just have an overall knowledge of them. I'm also in BOCES program, which is also animal science, so that also helps me out a lot. And we do some dissections there too. We dissected a sheep brain, which was really cool, and I saw like all of the different parts of the brain and how it all worked, and yeah.
So I really chose dissections because our program is hands-on based, inquiry-based labs. We get the kids being the leaders. Abby was in a group of 4 other students, and she basically taught the class. I walk around and I move, and I'm constantly moving throughout the room. So Abby had a sheep uterus, table 2 had a beef uterus, and table 3 had a pig uterus. Yeah. So all these are being dissected during one class block. And you take it and you dissect and you do all these fun things, and then we come back and we compare them all. These hands-on labs are really getting the kids involved. Like, they're not sitting back, they're involved, they're engaged. If they don't want to do the lab, like some lab partners, they read the directions, but they're all really engaged. And I chose to talk about the dissections because having this opportunity to have the agriculture program and have the hands-on and just be in the classroom like that is a huge change, and it's going to be so good. It's going places, I promise. We actually have 2 food science sections next year because it was so awesome this year. So I'm really excited for that, and I want to thank you for having me and Abby here to talk to you guys today.
It's also sometimes nice to have someone who doesn't want to dissect, because then you have someone to read off from the paper to see what you're actually looking for. So I knew what I was looking for within the dissection.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. Yeah.
So with block scheduling, there are some classes that really appreciate the length, and there are some classes who it's a struggle to maintain students' attention or even like narrow down a topic for that long. Do you feel like the block is long enough? Like when you're dissecting
I
something,
love the block.
What if it ends and then like you're only halfway dissected? Do you
Well,
put it in the fridge and then
no. They go back in a jug of formaldehyde. But the block scheduling is really a saving grace. And honestly, that's been my biggest struggle as a first-year teacher is time management, like figuring out how to manage my time. But you just learn, like I have 86 minutes, so these kids are prepared before they come in. Like we read over the directions, the class before. They know what they're coming in for. They're set up. They're ready to go. We start right away and we dissect right through, and then they know they have 15 minutes left. And usually, like if we had to compare all the different like functions and how things function with the humans versus animals, that gets carried on to the third day. So like it's not just a one day, this lab starts and it ends. We prepare them before, we dissect, and then we finish the lab the next block. I love the blocks.
So you love the longer
I
time.
love the blocks.
I do too, because
They get a
gives
lot
me more
done,
time
and like they
to
are not
get
stressed
into it.
and they're not rushing, and they have time to perform fully. It works great for ag science, but I can't speak for everyone, so yeah.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Tom Bartuli and Lana to talk about the science research program.
I'll let Lana take this over, but as you guys know, again, the science research program is a 3-year program where they come to me and then they read and read and read and come up with their own independent and unique project. And at the end, they present at various events throughout the state and symposia. And we actually have 2 of them here. Dom, oh, he left too. So it's just Lana. And then, at the end, we also go to the symposium. We have a symposium, local symposium, which luckily this year we had at the Strand. Again, thank you again for Marilyn for coming for that. I think you guys all have the booklet for that, so if you want to check out some of the other work. But we've got our senior, and she's going to go through her, what she did for 3 years and what she found and what she got out of it. So, Lana, go ahead.
So over the last 3 years, I was studying how the herbicide Roundup and its active ingredient glyphosate was affecting different animals that live in aquatic waters, even around here, like the rivers, the canals, the streams. So what I was testing was how the active ingredient glyphosate in Roundup was negatively affecting aquatic flatworms called planarian, in how they were able to survive in their natural habitat, how they were able to retain their natural instincts, like they're naturally nocturnal, so they'll always prefer the dark, and how they'll be able to obtain their proper food sources when they're introduced to these outside chemicals. So I had come up with an experiment where I made a maze in a petri dish with a 120 grit sandpaper covering about a third, and this was just to create an uncomfortable texture to cause them to make a choice, just to ensure that this would not be an outside variable and that their natural instincts would be clearly affected or not affected. So they would be placed in one side of the petri dish, which would, on the very left side of the screen, is just the open petri dish. So they'd be placed on the right side, which would be exposed to the light in the initial part of the experiment, and there would be a timer set, and once all of the planarian had successfully made it across the sandpaper and reached the shaded side of the petri dish covered with black construction paper, which is the middle picture, then the timer would be stopped. And I had 5 concentrations of glyphosate in 20 milliliters of water, and each of those concentrations had 3 trials of this. And after all the trials were completed, I had bisected the planarian, meaning I cut them in half, and that's the right side of the picture, representing the dotted line. And after about 2 weeks, which is the typical regeneration time that planarian would need to regenerate from any type of injury in the wild, they were retested the same way with the light test as they were in the beginning. And after all the data was collected and analyzed, I had found that even in these smallest concentrations, which was microliters of glyphosate in the 20 milliliters of water, there was still a significant impact on the planarian escape times and how they'd be able to naturally survive in the water. Oh, that's my poster. Pretty cool.
Which is pretty.
Awesome.
So really, so we could really see the progression from, the primary school science fair posters to Lana's poster. It's really fantastic to see that process. So just leaving with you with 2 thank you slides. The first, just a little bit of other diverse activities in the classroom. got a student in the upper right-hand corner making biodiesel from recycled fry grease that we then fire up in a one-cylinder diesel generator over at the bus garage that we've maintained over the years. Below that, an ecological architecture project where students are trying to decide who could build the best insulating house, whether they chose rammed earth and polymer beads over a house with a grass roof or a living roof. And then another dissection and some other computer-based arguing from evidence. So a big thank you to the board and all of our administrators and our students and our families, and also to my colleagues, science teachers here. So thank you for all your support. And one final slide.
Oh, yeah, and again, thank you very much for supporting the science research program. It's a lot of work and a lot of time that these kids put through, and allowing you guys to let us go to these symposia. So these are the three. So you can see Lana's poster right there. This was at RPI. They were able to go and present in front of a panel of people, but just having that support there and continuing to get this, and they get opportunity for 12 college credits, and Lana, I think, got 10, right? 10 college credits for this one. So it's just a huge opportunity for these guys, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think that's it for presentations. Did we forget anybody? Presentations? Yeah, so this is a part of the meeting. So the meetings are open to the public. You're welcome to stay until the meeting is over. It's also the time where I normally will say, we get that some people are students, some people here are retirees, and maybe you don't want to be here for the whole meeting. So if you want to sneak out now, you certainly can. I just want to do one thing first I don't normally do. We've got some new people being approved by the board tonight. Is there, I think I see one person who's going to be appointed tonight. Anybody else here that's going to be appointed tonight? But before the big crowd goes, I just want to recognize Travis, right? I think, so Travis Reynolds is out there. He's going to be appointed in a few minutes. While there's a crowd of people here, if we could give him a nice Hudson Falls.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade in the elementary school. As long as the board appoints, I put a lot of pressure on you. But if you need to sneak out, now's a great time to get to people, have to get to work and all that tomorrow. Thank you to all of our students. Yeah, if you were a student and you presented and you wanted dessert, please take one. Please do. If you want to steal one, give it to her tomorrow.
It's summer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, it's for some people.
Hey, it's summer?
Oh, it is.
And if you're a retiree and still here and you want one, please take one. That was awesome.
Hey, I guess I'm not going to be an overachiever. I was gonna, but they're all leaving. Have a good night, guys.
Okay, so now that we're done with Mr. Ward's superintendent's presentation, I open up for public comment. Do we have anybody for public comments? Going once, going twice. Okay, moving on to committees, personnel. Mr. Canini.
It's pretty busy this month because of filling the positions for summer school and next year and everything. Most of the HFTA positions are completed, but I'd like to point out that Jessica is going to be appointed for the high school, and Damien Switzer will be backfilling her position.
I'm just gonna, I know that a question was asked about his background, so just very quickly. He retired from Queensberry 1 year ago. In the past year, he has been doing an interim in the 7 through 12 over at Salem. So he's joining us with a wealth of experience. I don't know how many years he was at Queensberry, but he was at Queensberry many years. So a lot of experience coming there.
Previous to that, Bolton, and then was at Queensberry previous to that as an AP. So he's had a lot of experience in administration.
Rounding out our team nicely. Sorry.
Okay, anybody have any questions? So by consent, that passes. Moves us on to athletics.
Thank you. So you were just officially appointed by the board.
Yes.
And that's, that young man is a Hudson Falls product, returning and hoping to be here for a long, long time with us. So many of you know that name, Reynolds, is Hudson Falls name. So you're a couple, you're kind of 4 mile away or half a mile maybe. Yeah, pretty much. So welcome
Perfect.
aboard. Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, so that moves us to athletics. Mr. Chair.
All right, bit of a report here for you today. So recognizing some spring sports accomplishments, we've had some scholar athlete teams. As a reminder, this is teams where 75% of the roster have a average of 90 or above for the marking period. So pretty significant accomplishment there. So the following teams achieved that status: baseball, softball, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, boys tennis, girls track and field. So congratulations to those teams. And for this entire school year, we had 70% of our teams across all 3 seasons meet this criteria. So good work by our sport teams and our student athletes. We had the senior athlete dinner recently. I was last week at the 1925 barn. I just want to say thank you to Rebecca Smith and the Booster Club for hosting this event. Each senior was able to receive a memento and green and white cords to wear at graduation. A program called Anyone Can Save a Life. It's an emergency action program for after-school practices and games. It's designed to empower students to be part of a coordinated response to an emergency situation. Each coach and team would need to complete training courses and submit an emergency action plan to the athletic office. This could be a mandate if passed by the New York State Public High School Sporting or Athletic Association over the summer. We've had something on topic the last couple months: athletic trainer. So Mr. Carpenter, our athletic director, worked with Mr. Ward, Mr. DiCaprio, and Mrs. Boucher to create a job description for this position. It's planned to post soon, and our hope is to have that filled before fall sports begin. And lastly, thank you everyone that served on the athletic committee, the entire board, for your support over the year. It's much appreciated. Special thank you to the people who work behind the scenes to make sure our athletic programs and events are able to operate smoothly. Transportation department, building maintenance and grounds crews, they put a lot of time and effort into what we're doing, so thank you to them. And a lot of work went in this year to ensure our student athletes had every opportunity to participate safely in athletics, that our facilities are always top-notch. So thank you to them. Any questions?
Any questions for Mike? Okay, we do have one resolution regarding mergers with South Glens Falls for boys varsity swimming and diving and modified swimming and diving. So be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the following 2023-24 sports merger with South Glens Falls for the boys varsity swimming and diving and the modified swimming and diving. We have a motion. Amanda, seconded by Mike. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, that moves us on to the audit committee. Mrs. Grimaldi.
We met last week for our audit committee meeting, and just, I guess, one more thank you to our community for supporting our budget and passing all of our propositions as well as the budget. So just one more thank you there. I'll start with the treasurer's report. So this is the treasurer's report for the month of April. We had $7.9 million in the general fund to begin with, 5.2 in receipts, and 4.8 disbursements, leaving us a balance in the general fund in April of $8.1 million, and a total cash on hand of $10.2 million. June is typically, so looking, I know this is April, but looking at June, it's usually a pretty expensive month with principal and interest payments and the extra payroll. But I think we are supposed to be in a good position for June, so that shouldn't be any issues there. The appropriation status report and also the revenue status report are in your board docs. If you have any questions on those, as well as the monthly bills. There is a budget transfer that we will have a resolution for approval. This is just a $6,000 transfer for the traffic study that we did. So that will be in there for approval. Extracurricular account balance report is also in bit of activity there, which is always good to see. I think I'll hand it over to Kevin for the internal audit update, and then we also have the EDC contract.
We discussed for having our internal audit, which is one of many audits we have in the school district. We have external, which we have new auditors coming in this year to do. Every year, we also do an internal audit, which is more of a pick one area and focus on it, and just basically see how the transactions work in that area, what types of policies. We're very heavy in policy and procedure. Alan Prindle, who is a former state controller, is our internal auditor. He's been here on and off for the last couple of weeks, and Dan, he said he's done tomorrow, right? Is that what he said?
Yeah, he was planning to be finished tomorrow.
Yep, we house him right outside Dan's office, right over there, so sorry, I always forget to do that. He'll be here for another day, but he's been basically looking at our extracurricular activities. He's been auditing through those for that, because that's one of the areas in a school that cash changes hands. So they do that every 5 or 6 years when they come in to do these audits. So he'll be done tomorrow. He probably will. I don't know if he'll make it in time for the July meeting, but we'll have the audit for the August meeting to give you guys an update on that for review, and then we turn that into the state. So, the other item is that was added after the audit meeting, just because I happened to come in afterwards. When it comes to the energy performance contract, as Dan noted, we got the approval for the 10% incentive to move forward at the budget vote. We've had a meeting with all parties involved. We're basically battling through the contract piece of it, which should be resolved within a couple weeks. So in order to move forward, this is different than a capital project, how this is financed, how it's handled. Bernie Dunnigan Incorporated is who we use for all of our bonding, all of our bans, everything to do with capital projects. So there's a municipal finance agreement, and it's for the EPC lease resolution. As we move forward to fund this project, they're going to be our financial advisors on that, and basically they handle everything from soup to nuts when it comes down to the step one to the end of us borrowing or doing lease purchases with this EPC. So they're instrumental, and I recommend that we do bring them on to help us with that, because they're already on for our capital project. They've been on for every capital projects we had, so it's a great group. They're extremely good, and they'll just make sure everything's lined up moving forward. And I think we have a resolution for that. There'll be a.
One other thing, there's also a resolution on there that I forgot to mention for the creation of the ECA account for the middle school yearbook.
Okay, any questions for Crystal? Okay, so first thing, we need a motion to approve the April treasurer's report. Do we have a motion for that? So Heidi, seconded by Mike. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. The first resolution, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the creation of a new ECA account for the middle school yearbook. Do we have a motion? Moved by Amanda, seconded by Heidi. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls School District approves the budget transfer. Do we have a motion for that? By Crystal, seconded by?
Second.
Mark. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. And lastly, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls School District approves BPD Municipal Finance as our lender for the EPC lease financing. Do we have a motion? Moved by Crystal, seconded by? Mike. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, that moves us to transportation. Dr. Steele?
Your DOT report is right there, your trip report is right there to read. Good news, we are getting the 2 buses, bus 176 and 178, will be here in time for next school year. We're still working on the 3/4 ton vans we talked about in the last 2 months. news from the Transportation Department is our EV infrastructure and fleet assessment. We've been submitting some information to National Grid about the infrastructure that we would need, modifications, et cetera. We're moving towards a EV busing, which as of 2027, new buses that we buy will have to be zero emissions electric. And by 2035, our fleet will need to be zero emissions electric. So we've got the paperwork from National Grid submitted. We're meeting with a few other tech companies, bus companies to try to figure out how this might happen, what we might need to change. I've talked to a few people in the community that are concerned about things. There's more questions than answers right now and stuff, but at least in 2027, we have 4 years before we have to start using this thing, buying them new. So we're working on that, trying to get ahead of it and anticipate any problems we might have. I don't think we have a ton of information yet. We know any details of anything yet.
Any details on electric buses?
What's that?
Any details on electric buses?
At this point, we just got some stuff in yesterday. There's some grant programs that are out there that we're looking at. They're regionally targeted. It's kind of interesting, and a lot of that is down in Westchester County, which I don't know why. Yeah.
Smaller districts.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't have to travel as far. But just to piggyback on what Brian said, we've gone through the first step of this, basically electrifying our bus fleet. There's many steps in this at this point in time, and it's going to be contingent upon the buses that we buy. The prices of the buses are very high right now. That's one of the reasons for the grant money, but it's trying to play this out and see where the funding's going to come from. There's a lot of questions that aren't answered. Even when we had this meeting with this group, there are a lot of questions still are not answered. So it's gonna evolve over the next couple of years on exactly just the infrastructure itself. When it comes to plugging in buses and being able to charge and having backup power sources in case you lose power is going to be an issue. So these are all things that we're looking at, and we're working with our architect. We worked with this group, this Cornice group. And we're just kind of trying to take the best ideas from where these guys have worked before and kind of plug them in together and see how we can make that work at our grads. Because ours is a big fleet. We cover a lot of square miles here with school buses. And at this point in time, these things are, with the information that's out there now, is, they have to be plugged in between runs, like morning run, afternoon run. And we've got to have the infrastructure there, but we also have to have the procedures there to make sure. Because if you go out and there's no electricity in the bus doesn't move.
So you mean the electricity doesn't last an entire day of bus driving?
Not necessarily.
Not yet.
Nope.
Maybe for short runs, but.
It might on a local run that goes around the village, but when you go all the way out, like by us, and all the way around like that. So that's another thing that's going to play into it, is how the routes are done too, to make sure that we have enough charge and everything. So this is a long process. I just want the board to know that, and we're at the beginning phases of it, and there's capital construction involved, there's grants, there's all kinds of stuff involved to get this lined up. So.
What we've done so far is that part of what's being mandated from New York State as far as getting the ground phase, like the research end done? Or is the stuff being mandated, or is this we're just trying to get ahead of it?
Well, the state, we're actually doing this on our own right now. Some schools are a little bit ahead of us. There's actually a few smaller schools that have actually gotten electric buses. But when you look at schools our size, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to build that infrastructure. So we're actually, there's a lot of groups together that are kind of going through this, and we're actually sharing ideas with each other on how we can possibly make this work. Because there's a lot here. That bus garage facility is going to look different.
There's 2 mandates so far. One is that you'll be all zero emissions the new buses by 2027. The second is, there's another report that has to be filled out on the state business portal each year by every school district, stating what your progress is towards becoming that. Those are the two mandates that are
So
out
in a
there.
way, you have to do something, like I assume just saying you have made no progress is
Right. Right, well, and the research that we're doing and the companies that we're meeting with, that's stuff that will be noted in that when the submission occurs. The other piece is that we have signed on with a group of schools at our BOCES for more talking power when we're speaking about how this is going to roll out in our area. So we did have that conversation with those groups, just like it said, and we talked about a little bit last month that we're doing that. After that occurred, I had a meeting with superintendents at BOCES, and Tony Muller from BOCES, who many of, if not all of you know who that is, said, is there any interest in BOCES taking the lead on part of this to try to get more people to come and talk if there's a bigger audience? So I raised my hand and said yes, and then came back and asked permission from Kevin after I'd already said yes. And so we're in that group. We haven't met or gotten any more information yet.
Has any discussion started on the mechanics side of this? That's specialized training.
So in advocacy, so it crosses lines. So most of the conversation about electric buses has been in the advocacy lane. Talking with our legislators about the challenges, and Brian said it very aptly, that there's more questions than answers. That is completely true on how this is going to roll out, where these buses are going to come from. And don't think this as me being against it, but if we were going to go out and try to buy 30 electric buses, our fleet's about 30. It'd take us probably about 10 years to get them based on how they're coming available, and I probably overestimate. It would take several years for us to get those if we said we had the cash tomorrow. The other piece is they are 3 to 4 times the cost of a bus. A 66 passenger right now, somewhere around $130,000. These are somewhere around $400,000 right now. And I don't want to, I'm going to give you one more little fact. So the financing, normally you're financing a bus over 10 years, over 5, and the 8 comes back in what time frame?
Over 5.
So the new buses, they're gonna send the aid back to you over 10 years, is how they've got it kind of drawn up right now. So it's gonna take you longer, it's gonna cost you 3 to 4 times as much, it's gonna take you twice as long to get your money back, and the bus is projected to last the same 10 years that the diesel, gas, or propane lasts right now. So there's a cash issue there, right? If you're paying 4 times as much and you're getting the reimbursement over twice as long, there's a cash issue there. That's all part of the advocacy conversations. We're hopeful that there will start to be more answers, because that's what we need. But in the meantime, we're not allowed to sit on our hands, because when 2027 comes, we don't want to be the school that said, we didn't think you were serious, because there was too many questions. So we'll keep working through it. But Kevin was right. It's going to be a long road, and there is not a lot of answers. And we'll keep figuring out as much as we can as we go along.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I had a few questions. I wanted to make sure that you said something about it because most schools are going to it. There's a website I came across from New York State that's got some information on it. I was going to forward that to the board today. It's just New York State's general release. There's a few links on it. There's some very general information about funding and stuff like that, so I'll try to make it send it out.
Okay, any questions for Brian? Okay, that moves us to buildings and grounds. Mr. Gallo?
I'll go through a few things here real quickly, and then Dan can cover the application and the naming. Here in the high school, A-wing bathrooms are open, and I hope you saw that video that Dan put together. But very impressive, the work that was done. It's real nice. F-wing's in progress. The auditorium and the library. A tremendous amount of work has gone into it, and I think in the next couple months we're really going to see a lot of activity and more toward the final product. So kudos to everybody working on those, and I think the students are going to be thrilled with the new library. EPC, I know that was mentioned earlier with a contract, and if there's any other updates, I think Dan can provide that. But I just want to thank Mr. McKeegan and his entire team.
They do a lot for this district. And there's over 150 acres and 470,000 square feet in our 6 buildings. So when you think about it, that's like cleaning 300 homes every single night. So kudos to his entire team, in the summer mowing the lawns, in the winter plowing the parking lots. And I just want to thank them and for a job well done, and they deserve that recognition. So thank you to them. And Dan, if you could touch on that application in the meeting.
Yep, so we received a application. The board has a policy on naming of school facilities, plaques, and memorials. So we did receive an application that referenced the auditorium and naming it after a specific individual. You have that. Doesn't necessarily have to be approved tonight, but in your policy it says the board will approve those requests. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that application, it's actually linked right there on that report. You can. So I'm going to leave the name out of it for tonight if the board hasn't, but we should take action on that next time. And we talked in the committee a little bit about having a larger plaque so that if we had other individuals, maybe for that space, that we wanted to add to that or later on that we were able to do so. You can see some of the plaques that the committee was recommending. If you go up by the high school gymnasium, you can see them. They're like black background with silver lettering. They're really nice. Something like that is kind of what we had on our mind. Talking with Vince and Mark through the last couple of meetings. But you do have an application. The board does have to approve it at some point. It does not need to be tonight. So if you haven't looked at it, we can do it next month. If you want to do it tonight, that's okay too. But I want to make sure folks have read it before it occurs. So, EPC contract, Kevin's right, we're close. Larry went through that. We met all together in one room. Their representative from Danforth, Larry was in the room. We had Steve Wickman, and we had Eric Robert from Schoolhouse, and Dave, and Kevin and I. I don't think I missed anybody. I think that was the whole team. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb. We're really close, and we just want to make sure that that's an 18-year payback. We want to make sure that everything is in line exactly how it has to be, so that if we have a concern later on, we know that we upfront have protected the district and the residents and taxpayers very well on what's in that contract going forward. But it wasn't way out of line. There was just some specific things we wanted to make sure were in there explicitly, and some things that we wanted to make sure were removed explicitly from the contract. So we have an updated version that came through today, I think, that Larry will look at again, and so will our team. And you guys already empowered me to sign that when it's ready, so when Larry and our team says it's ready, I'll sign it. And but we are still on schedule with that work because their design team has been working on our design anyways, knowing that as long as it passed the voters, we would be moving forward as long as we can get an acceptable contract. So, but there is state approvals that have to occur, so it won't be like snapping your fingers. The work is scheduled for next summer anyways. We should be in good shape for next summer. I want to just mention the playgrounds real quickly, and then I'll stop, I promise. But we did some work on playgrounds. We had some money, federal funds. Some were committed to playgrounds for health, safety, wellness in that vein. What we could spend federal funds on. Our number was 270. Somewhere 250 to 270 was right there. I will tell you that we weren't able to do as much work as we thought we were going to be able to do. Surprise, surprise, that's everything. What might be a surprise to you to know that code has changed on the number of feet of wood chips that need to surround every piece of equipment. It was doubled since the last time we did any playground equipment work here, and certainly going from 6 foot of wood chips to 12 foot of wood chips ate up some of the money that we wanted to use to buy equipment. But once you start doing a project, you're required to bring everything up to code across all of your buildings. So if board members are hearing about all we did was replace the wood chips around the swings, it's because once we broke ground on one piece of equipment, we were required to do that on every piece of equipment on every playground. So necessary, and in the end, it is safer for kids, but some folks to the naked eye, or people from the community, or some folks that work in our buildings who don't have all the information, they think that we thought it was a great upgrade just to bring in some new wood chips. We would have liked to have done more. We did as much as we possibly could while coming up to the standard required by regulation. That's what anything else that you wanted me to touch on? Vince, we're good?
So you want to table the dedication thing? or-
That's up to you. I just want to make sure that I'm happy either way.
Has anybody have any questions concerned about the naming of the auditorium to Mrs. Joyce Merrill? Okay. Should we make a resolution on it?
Yeah, you, absolutely.
You want to wait till next month so people can read it, or?
So there's no rush. Why don't we do that? We'll put, everybody's got it. We'll
Just
put it
table.
on next month.
Okay.
We'll put, not because anybody has any concerns, but because we want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to look at it.
Okay. So any questions for Mr. Gallo? Okay. That moves us to policy. Mrs. Landsman.
Okay. We have no new first reads on the agenda. There's one second read. It is about graduation options, early graduation accelerated programs, policy 7220. So there's just one red line, and you can see what we're going to replace it with. The board will not pay tuition and other related costs for those courses students take independently of the school program. The district will pay tuition for those high school students enrolled in college courses as part of their regular in-district high school program. So, yeah, we just need to approve that. Does anyone have any questions on it?
I think this is a good option for kids that maybe their families can't afford it.
Mhm.
Because I know my kids took advantage of it. I think it's great that more kids can take advantage.
Yeah.
And I would say the same. I recommend it. We had a cost number. I think the cost for current enrollment would be like $35,000. Mike,
35, yep, and then we're estimating around 50 in any given year.
It provides access to programs that some students now can't access because of things beyond their control as a student. Let me say it that way.
Okay. So you heard the recommendation. We just need a motion to approve the policies, second read on this policy 7220, graduation options, early graduation accelerated programs. Do we have a motion? So moved by Crystal, seconded by Heidi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Landsman? Okay, moves us to advocacy, PR, Mrs. Andrikovics.
I don't have too much for you. Legislative session just ended, and I got the link today. I did not have a chance to put all of the hyperlinks within, but there was nothing drastically different than what I sent you guys last month, unless I'm mistaken.
Yep. No, I think that you nailed it. There's one thing to note that passed late in session. There's one other thing to note that didn't occur in session, which might occur sometime over the summer in the next couple of weeks. The Lunar New Year was declared a school holiday. I'll find out more about how that impacts our school next year. But I believe it falls on a Saturday next year, which usually by state law means that we don't have to recognize it by giving everybody a day off. But the year after, we will, and it will cause us to have to adjust our calendar. If I find out at the meeting I'm at tomorrow that we do have to recognize it next year, it will cause a problem for our calendar for next year. So I would have to bring a revised calendar back to the board for approval. So next year, it's February 10th. Lunar New Year is...
Sleep year.
Lunar New Year, no, is Asian or Chinese New Year, commonly known as Chinese New Year. And there was a second one that was on the legislators' agenda, but it was only made a holiday in New York City, and that was Diwali. But for a while, we thought we were going to have two new holidays out of the school calendar for next year. Diwali is New York City only, and that is effective for next year as well. So I'll provide more information. Right now, it looks like we won't have to adjust ours, but it'll make a difference in our calendars going forward. You're going to see a new holiday show up on our calendars. And I guess looking out, as more holidays get added, and the state doesn't allow you to have session days prior to September 1, for which you can claim for state aid, we're running out of days between September 1 and the end of Regents Week to get our 180 required. And this is not to make anybody concerned at this point, but what some schools have talked about, what some schools in other areas are to do is there is not a full week off for February break. So that's just for later conversation, if and when we have to talk about it. Yeah, Regents Week next year, while we're on calendars, is very odd because of another holiday, and I can't pronounce it correctly, so I won't even start to try, but they put, normally the rating day for Regents is at the end of all the tests. Next year, it's right in the middle because they're making it match L-Ide Afir, is there another? L-Ide holiday. So that is going to make it so our schedule for students looks very odd in the high school because that rating day, and then there's tests before and after and a school day in between, and it's very close to when Juneteenth falls next year.
You're talking about Eid?
Yeah, is that what how it's pronounced?
Ramadan? It's the Muslim thing.
You're correct. It's a Muslim holiday.
It's Eid.
Yeah. So that's going to be a weird calendar, but again, it doesn't change what we've already done. It's just worth knowing that people might say, boy, that seems odd that they have a day of tests, then we have a day off, and then we have a day of tests, and then a day off, and then we have 2 more days of tests. It's very fragmented the way that it works out. Beyond our control, but worth you knowing if and when you might hear about it from anybody who, what's the circles you run in.
Is there any consideration, I know in the past we talked about snow days, whether you have snow days or whether they're virtual days? Is that anything that?
Right, so virtual snow days are still allowed. That's part of the question you're asking. The other piece I would say is that I heard over the last few years, I've heard that we don't necessarily enjoy the virtual option for our students very much, and neither do the folks in the public who come out and speak to us. That doesn't mean a ton of people come out and speak to us, but the ones who came out in the last couple of years and prior to that, before me getting here in the meetings that I watched or read the notes of. So yes, it's an option. Some schools are talking about that's what they're going to do to combat that, to maybe save February break if it starts to become a lot of pressure on the middle of that. So we can talk about that at a later date. Just want to make sure that if we're going to have virtual snow days and count them as school days, that our students have access to high quality instruction. And the one thing that didn't happen is the assembly. Actually went out of session before making a motion to approve their bullet aid list, and I clicked on the link, and Hudson Falls is on there for $15,000. So I'm hoping the assembly is going to come back, pass that resolution, so that we do get that bullet aid. And I want to thank Kerry Warner for whatever that's earmarked for. I'm happy to have it. But I will tell you, if they don't come back and act on it, we don't get the money. And I had that F. Ward Edward with $100,000 extra dollars they were going to give me. And the Senate did not come back and vote on it. Not enough members came back to vote on it for it to pass. So we ended up $100,000 less than we thought we were going to be in bullet aid. We still got $400,000, but $500,000 was the number I was looking for. So we'll see. So I think they're going to be back in the next probably 2 weeks to vote on that.
That's it? Okay. So that concludes our committee portion of the agenda. So that moves us to new business. We have a field trip request. Did you want to speak on behalf of that, or I can?
Yep. So the field trip request came in, and I asked for a little bit of extra information from the music department. They're looking to take a group of kids on a really nice field trip, and they think they're estimating, 50 to 60 students, and they're estimating the cost at about $600 a student. But they're going to do fundraising for it. So I will tell you that I'm all for any kind of trips like this, as long as we don't have huge barriers for students to participate. And I think they've got the appropriate things in line. I would recommend that the board do approve it. I'm happy to answer the questions I can answer. I will tell you that Kelly is the person they've been communicating back and forth with, knowing that I've been asking specific questions and answers. And I don't know if anybody else around the table has had a conversation with Mrs. Havern to provide any more background, but I recommend it.
Yes, well, I can speak to a little bit
Go ahead.
if you want me to, Dan.
Yep.
They did this trip just before COVID. We did it back, I think, in 2019. Same exact trip down to Virginia Beach area. Be at Busch Gardens, stayed the same. I think it's a concert, music park. Great program, went really well. The kids had a great time, and they do all the fundraising. Nobody wasn't able to go because of money. And they make sure those kids are ready to go. And it's a great experience for our kids. Some of our kids have never been in the ocean. It was April, early April. They get to do some things that a lot of our kids don't get the opportunity to do. So it was a great experience. I was able to go with them to the chaperone, and they were grateful to be there. You see a smile on their faces, and it represented well. We placed very well in all three competitions. We had orchestra there. We had our choir and our band. It was awesome.
Great. Some opportunity.
I want to say we did that as well. I remember going to Busch Gardens and then for a competition. I don't know if it's the same one in a lot of years.
When you were a student?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, in Massachusetts, yes. But it's something I still remember and really, really enjoyed. So it's a cool experience.
Awesome. So you heard the recommendation. So be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the field trip request for the Music in the Park Music Festival. We have a motion. So let's do Mike, so moved. Seconded by Crystal, all in favor? Opposed? That carries.
How awesome to start sending kids on these things again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interrupt and just go back. I'm a working mom in the last 2 weeks of the school year. I'm fried.
I bet.
So Eve doesn't happen the same time year after year. So it would just be next year's
Correct.
calendar that would have a special accommodation. It wouldn't be like every calendar.
That's how
year
they've
after that.
that's how they've addressed it for next year. In
Okay.
other years, they address it where it falls.
Okay.
It's true for all three that he mentioned, so.
They all
Eid
fall.
And Lunar New Year and Diwali all are
So
lunar
next year is just
based,
like the
just like
perfect
Easter.
storm.
They all float, yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's the first time we've seen them address that holiday in that fashion. It's the first time I've ever seen rating day be any place but that last day.
There's also a rating day.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I'll have a question about what we're talking about now in 10 minutes, so just be prepared.
You're going to be out in 10 minutes. If you're still here in 10 minutes, you're going to be by yourself.
I know, because we'll finish this up. Okay, so that moves to disposal of textbook. Kevin, did anything that you want to say on behalf of that, or just read what we have for resolution?
Textbooks, just, yeah,
Just
they're
regular,
obsolete.
okay.
They don't, you don't get companies to buy them anymore.
Okay.
As they have been 8 or 10 years, so they, unfortunately, most of them just go.
Okay, does anybody have any questions pertaining to the two resolutions before? Okay, so be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves a request for the disposal donation of outdated Spanish textbooks. Do we have a motion? So moved by Amanda, seconded by Crystal, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the request for the disposal donation of outdated textbooks at the primary school. Do we have a motion? So moved by Heidi, seconded by Amanda, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, and I don't believe we have any need for executive session? Okay. That concludes this evening's meeting. I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Crystal, seconded by Mike. All in favor? Opposed? Okay.